So, dear viewers of DEO, welcome to the virtual tour of the city of Ruse. And I'm Vladimir, your guide. And we are going to see some photos of important places in the center of Ruse, which is a city with history of some 20th century. It starts with the Romans as a port on the river Danube, and it has been it is one of the largest cities in Bulgaria even today, with some 140,000 people population, and it has this bourgeois past, which we are now going to see. When Bulgaria got re-established as a country, as a state in 1879, Ruse was probably the most developed city, along with Varna, had a number of bank offices, a lot of capital, etc. So let us start. First of all, this is the very center of Ruse, and it is one of the symbols of our city. It's the Statue of Liberty, which is built by an Italian architect, Arnoldo Zocchi, famous also for doing the statue of of Columbus in Buenos Aires and Saint Francisco of Assisi in Cairo. So in the years before the World War I and the Balkan Wars, which started in 1912, Bulgaria had an economic boom, and this period is reflected also in the architecture which we are going to see. And especially this building, this monument, dates back to 1909. And it is on the Freedom Square. All around are buildings of that period, with the exception of the building which you see in the back, which is the municipality. And let us start with the tour. So Ruse has this architecture which has certain Austrian or Austro-Hungarian influence, Danubian influence, if you wish, and also so that is why one of its nicknames is the Small Vienna. At least for the Bulgarian people, it has this nickname, and the other is the city of the first things. And here we see we have just made a turn, and now the Statue of Liberty is behind us, and we see the building where the first cinema screening in Bulgaria took place in 1897. So Ruse is called the city of the first things because, given that it was one of the most developed cities after Bulgaria's liberation, it did a lot of things related to modernity for the first time in Bulgaria, in the country of Bulgaria. At that moment, Sofia was still emerging as a capital city, and Ruse was, in fact, the bourgeois city. So I hope you see well that behind the trees, a little bit in the distance, is a three-store building which has a clock. It is the place where people usually meet. When people in Ruse want to make a meeting in the center of the city, they usually say we meet at the clock. And this building with the clock, in fact, is the first private bank in Bulgarian lands, which was established in 1881. And it was called Girdap. Those of you who are familiar with Turkish or Persian language could know that the word Girdap means whirlpool. So I can't say what's the exact explanation behind naming your bank like that, but I guess at that moment, immediately after the Ottoman times, it was we had still a big cultural influence from the Ottoman Empire, and that brought the name. And I told you that we have also this building, which is the building of municipality. It looks like a ship, and this square before it is important for another moment of Bulgarian history, the end of the 80s, when Ruse became once again the first city in a way where certain dissident movement and ecological movement emerged. So that was the first citizen movement, if we can say that, which challenged the authority of post-communist Bulgaria, and there were protests at that square against air pollution from the neighboring Romanian city of Giurgiu, and most precisely against the perceived lack of action by the authorities of Bulgaria at that time. This air pollution lasted for all the 80s. And in fact, it ended with the closure of the chemical plant in Giurgiu after the shock therapy was applied in our country. So it no longer existed, it had economic sustainability. And if we go a little bit to the eastern part of the city square, we have the State Opera, and it is one of the institutions which give pride to the citizens, because it's a very, it has great popularity, and it makes a lot of projects with European and international singers and musicians, and importantly also sometimes with Danish conductors or musicians, and it is usually maybe it could be said that it is on par with the Sofia institutions in that sense, because, for example, the previous director of State Opera became the director of Sofia Philharmonic. So you can understand that that is an institution at an international level for our city. And Ruse, just like many other cities in Bulgaria, has a little bit of a patchwork architecture. We don't have specific style all over certain place. We have buildings from various periods. And here we see one of the old buildings in Ruse. It's the Orthodox Church Saint Trinity, which was built in 1632. And an important note should be made. You see a tower, but the tower is from a later moment. In fact, you see that the church is very low to the ground. If you enter the church, you go downstairs. So in fact, the church is built inside, in the ground. It's not built to be high. And that was a rule in the first period of Ottoman rule in Bulgarian lands, that Christian temples, Christian churches shouldn't be higher than the mosques. And you see here how a church from that moment, the 17th century, looked like. Now we are going to see two slides, one after another, of the same building. And this is a building which gives to a greater extent the validity, legitimacy of the claim that we are small Vienna, because it's a building built by an Austrian architect in 1902, and it is the building of the theater. However, it was when it was built, it was something like a mall of that moment. I mean, there were a lot of shops, casino, etc. So it was built as a commercial center, and the rents from those businesses were used for the city's educational system. So buildings such as this one from the beginning of the 20th century at that moment were called profit-yielding buildings. And we have such buildings also in other large cities in Bulgaria at that moment. It is another symbol of our city, and it is the place where now we have the Austrian library of Ruse. So you can guess that Ruse still has these connections with along Danube with countries from Central Europe. And that is just one look from another angle towards the building. So you can see that it is in the very center of the city. Now, that is just to give you an idea about the center of the city and about the square where either protests or concerts, rock concerts especially, or any other concerts took place. This is the beginning of Borisova Street, And you can see that Borisova is named after the former Bulgarian monarch Boris, who ruled until the World War II. And at the end of this street, maybe you see something like a tower. Unfortunately, there was a fog when the photo was taken, but that tower is more than 200 meters tall, and it used to be the highest tower on the Balkans until the beginning of 21st century. So it is just another of, it was built in the 80s, and another sign of modernity in Ruse, I guess. Ruse, I told you that Ruse was a bourgeois city, and one of these elements is that it had a lot of cultural influences and different communities. So that this building here, which is now the building of the economics high school, was before used by a Catholic order called Notre Dame du Sion. This order was making courses. It had a school in Ruse for women, and it closed in 1948 when, as you know, with the advent of the socialist regime, a number of connections to the West, to Western Europe, were tight. Now we are going to see a few buildings which are located very close to the previous one, in a short pedestrian zone, and this building used to belong to one of the Bulgarian bankers. In fact, there were two brothers, and one of the brothers was living here, while the other was living on the other side of the pedestrian zone. And they held a bank. It was a bank which funded a lot of railroad projects connected with modernization of Bulgaria after liberation. And I placed this house, this photo of house, just for you to have an idea where rich people of that bourgeois times were living. And just against the building which we have just seen, the bankers one, that is a Methodist church. And it is here to give an idea that Ruse was, and in a way still is, a multi-ethnic city, and people, city of different religion cults. And we have, as you know, Bulgarians are Orthodox, but there is also Catholic Church, synagogue, mosque, Armenian Church, and that is a Methodist Church, and Baptist Church, and of course many of the new Protestant churches. And I hope I'm not missing somebody, but you know, certainly Ruse, as a larger city, has also a diversity of communities. Now that is the building of the other brother, which I told you is just on the other side of the street, and it is next to the Methodist Church. Unfortunately, the note is not seen well, but that is the central place, administrative office of the Catholic Eparchy for Northern Bulgaria. And you see, it is another of those remnants of the bourgeois period. And in a certain moment, the Catholic Church acquired this building from the brother who was in fact who used to be even mayor of Ruse. And after, in socialist times, such buildings didn't belong to the church as far as I know, but with the recovery of what we call democratic state, the Catholic Church returned its control over the building. So, given that I spoke about the Catholic Church, I make a short jump in space. So, this is the Catholic Church of Ruse, and it is next to the river Danube. It has an Italian priest, and there is, I guess, not very big, but still there is a Catholic community in Ruse, and important note, or maybe source of certain pride, is that as far as I know, the first organ in Bulgaria was used to be placed in Ruse. So in a way, also that is an important part of the mythology about Ruse as city of first things. So I was, in a way, I made a tour of buildings of that moment of the beginning of the 20th century or the end of the 19th. And here we see the building of the library in Ruse. And it used to be before, when this building was made, it used to be to host the Chamber of Commerce. And as you might see at a closer study, there are a lot of decorations in the facade of this building. And that was because there was a recommendation by the municipality that buildings in the center of that period, the Belle Epoque period, be made with all types of decorations. And that is once again maybe in a way gives legitimacy to the claim that Ruse is small Vienna, even though, to be honest, there has been a lot of other architectural styles in Ruse, socialist as well, and what used to be spectacular architecture is not so abundant right now in the city. So here we see also, this is a garden, and on one side of the garden we have the library, and here is the Regional Museum of History. And this garden is related to the first decade of Bulgarian liberty, existence as a separate state. It is related also to the Serbian-Bulgarian War, because there is a monument here just next to the fountain, which commemorates the victims of the Serbian-Bulgarian War of 1885. And maybe here I need to make a short break just to explain that Bulgarians used to live at a larger geographical area than what is today Bulgaria. And when Bulgaria was established as a free country, it was established only on a part of Bulgarian lands, which is basically today's northern Bulgaria and the Sofia region. And there was another Bulgarian populated entity with certain autonomy inside the Ottoman Empire called Eastern Rumelia. And there were other Bulgarians who were living in the regions of Macedonia and Thracia, which are today mostly in other countries. So the thing is that this Serbian-Bulgarian war started after Bulgaria, what is northern Bulgaria, united with this entity called Eastern Rumelia, the entity which is basically to a large extent today southern Bulgaria. And there was a lot of diplomatic turmoil, and there was a fear that Bulgaria is getting too big. And at that moment, you know, there was a lot of nationalism of that times in the 80s. Nationalism was growing all over Europe. So there was a fear that Bulgaria becomes a menace to its neighbors, and Serbia intervened to protect the status quo. Bulgaria won that war. And as a result of a number of other diplomatic efforts, maybe I'm skipping too much, but basically the balance allowed Bulgaria to preserve this united larger country. And this square is somehow reflecting that period, including the contradiction between Russophiles and Russophobes, which is something very characteristic for Bulgarian politics. When Bulgaria made this small union between the two entities, Russia was opposed to that. And at that moment, Russia was instructing Bulgarian army. So Russia withdrew its instructors and officers from the Bulgarian army. Bulgaria fought with Serbia without generals. It just didn't have so high-ranking military men. But the fact that Bulgaria moved on and pushed forward for this union made other Western or European countries intervene somehow in support of Bulgaria. But the relations with Russia were strained, and there was a rebellion of Russophile officers which took place in Ruse, and they were, at a certain moment, they were held arrested inside this building which you see right now. I hope I'm not speaking too many facts, but I just suggest the history of this place, and I hope that's interesting. I told you that these brothers who had two houses next to one another had also a bank. And here you see their bank, which is today once again a bank building, but of course their bank belonged to the times before World War II, and it was even very much in the before World War I. And here we see a contemporary bank, a Hungarian-owned one. This is the building to the right, where you see some cars next to it. And to the left, you see Alexandrovska Street, which is basically something like an architectural reserve, because its architecture is to a large extent preserved the way it used to be in those bourgeois times of Ruse. So now we are moving along Alexandrovska Street, and I hope you get an idea how this street looks like. And certainly when we make walks in Ruse, Alexandrovska Street is the central street and a very nice one to have a walk. And also Alexandrovska is named after the first monarch of Free Bulgaria, who is called Alexander Battenberg. And he was of German origin, but he was also a relative of the Russian king. So he was diplomatically, or how can I say, he was a good option at that moment as a balance between the international forces to be monarch of Bulgaria. But in this turmoil which happened with this union which I spoke about in 1885, he had to choose between remaining loyal to its nation, his nation Bulgarians, and supporting the union, or remaining loyal to Russia, which was opposed. So he chose Bulgaria, and after that turmoil somehow blew him out of the office which he held. In any way, he's remembered for good in Bulgaria. So Alexandrovska is named after him. Now, I told you that Ruse has a multi-ethnic past, and even today it has, for example, a lot of Armenians in Ruse, of course, people of Turkish origin, whatever, Roma, maybe some Jews. And here you see an important person named in Ruse who is called Elias Canetti, and he's a Nobel Prize winner in literature, and he was born in Ruse in 1905 in a family which emigrated from Adrianople if you know, today it's called Edirne. It's a Turkish city on the border with Bulgaria. And his family had some business, I think trade. And eventually he became one of those Central European intellectuals, which you might know about, like Stefan Zweig, or other intellectuals who reflect a lot on the world and democracy, etc. So Elias Canetti is most famous for his work Masses and Power, and it is a very it was written decades ago, but it is very important today when we have Facebook. So I would advise you to have a look at Masses and Power. It is basically a study on types of masses, how masses develop, grow, or disappear. And Elias Canetti is an important asset for Ruse. Even though he emigrated from Ruse at the age of 7, he said in one of his works that everything that happened with him after he left Ruse had already happened to him inside Ruse. So we consider him as a true citizen of Ruse. He won the Nobel not as a Bulgarian citizen, but we consider him as a Ruse citizen, no matter what his nationality was. And he's important now because through the person of Elias Canetti and through the International Elias Canetti Society, which hosts the Austrian Library, by the way, Ruse gets important connections to Western Europe. And a number of Western or European intellectuals, writers, artists come to Ruse. And that is how our city proves another of its nicknames or claims that it is the most European city in Bulgaria. And just a small note, Networks Just, what the note you see behind the statue is in fact one of the cool cafes of Ruse. So just down the street from the Canetti monument, down the Slavianovska street, this is the house or the home of Canetti, which used to be the trade center of the family, and it is now a cultural center where a number of literature festivals, concerts, etc., performances took place, and they are administered by this International Society Canetti. Now, that is another interesting building, which is very close to the Danube, down Slavianovska Street, and it is now a hotel, but it started its existence as the house of a Greek tradesman with grain. So Ruse also used to have a Greek community before the Balkan Wars. This tradesman was very rich, but the nationalism of that times led to certain problems between Bulgarians and Greeks in Ruse, and his family had to leave or sell their assets in Ruse. And after that, the building was for some time consulate of Romania, Austro-Hungary, and Italy in changing hands. But also there is a curious story behind it. So there was, I think, an Austrian or a German who at some moment before the Balkan Wars was owning this building, and he played some kind of poker game with a Bulgarian businessman, and the wife of this Bulgarian businessman was also playing, and it looks like the game was so heated that at a certain moment the German or whatever the owner of this building put it as a stake, and to counterbalance such a stake, such a building, the other party in the game took as a stake his wife. And the curious part is that the Bulgarian, the one who put his wife as a stake, won. So he won also the building. And I told you that Ruse is on the Danube. So you see here a look to the quay of Ruse, which was recently renewed. And that is a good place for walk. It has some amphitheater, some places for events. And also the Danube, on the other side of the Danube, you see Romania. And the city of Giurgiu is not seen here, but it is a little bit to the right of the photo. Now, this is a look at the street which goes along and a little bit above the quay. And I made this photo just to give an idea that we don't have only a bourgeois architecture, even though we take pride in it. So the high building which you see is called Hotel Riga. And there was a certain practice in socialist Bulgaria that the most representative hotels in the big cities of Bulgaria are named after cities in the Soviet Union. So for example, in Sofia, you have Hotel Moskva or Moscow. In Plovdiv, you have Hotel St. Petersburg. And in Ruse, you have Hotel Riga. And well, out of Danube, after the boulevard next to Danube, we make a short pace walk and we reach again the place where we started. This is once again the Monument of Liberty. And our tour is over. And now in the next part of our event, I am expecting discussion and questions by you. Thank you for your attention.